But we begin in Texas. Not a battleground state, but the candidates came for dueling podcast interviews. Before campaigning in Michigan, former President Donald Trump was in Austin for an interview on the Joe Rogan Experience. That's the most listened to podcast in the U.S. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris taped an interview in Houston on a motivational podcast, Unlocking Us, hosted by Brené Brown. Harris is also holding a rally in Houston Friday night, joined by Queen Bee herself, Beyoncé, and then rounding out the trio, country music legend Willie Nelson, helping to rally voters to the vice president. When speaking to reporters Friday, Harris said that she is also campaigning for Democratic Senate candidate Colin Allred, who's running against Senator Ted Cruz in Texas. The focus of her rally, abortion rights, a key issue in the 2024 race, and Texas, a key example of how things have changed since the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Sadly, the elected leaders of Texas, a lot of them, have made Texas ground zero in this fundamental fight for the freedom of women to make decisions about their own body. So tonight we will be discussing the impact of that, not only to the women of Texas and their families, but to people around the country.
Final national New York Times Siena poll released with just 11 days to go shows the popular vote, which we all know tells us about the mood of the nation, but not who will win the White House necessarily. That popular vote is deadlocked. Both Harris and Trump are polling at 48% each. For the latest on the presidential race, I want to bring in CBS News campaign reporter Zach Hudak and CBS News political director Finn Gómez. Welcome, gentlemen. Zach, I'm going to start with you. Vice President Harris has been packing a lot of star power this past week. Eminem, Bruce Springsteen, Beyoncé, Willie Nelson. Does it all matter to voters?
Lana, I think the best way to look at these celebrity events is that the biggest factor they have is that they create a larger audience for these campaign events. As we get to this final stretch, we are now a mere 11 days from Election Day. As we get to this final stretch, these candidates are focusing on reaching as many voters as humanly possible on a daily basis. So when VP Harris holds an event in Houston, but Beyoncé is going to be there, that gets additional coverage, but it also gets additional interest from the public. It's purely pop culture, and it makes people want to tune in and watch that rally. And while they're tuning in to see Beyoncé maybe have a little bit of a political message, but mostly to see Beyoncé, they also hear from VP Harris talking about reproductive rights and what's at stake in this election. So I think the biggest factor is that by bringing celebrities out to these events, VP Harris is able to reach a much larger audience than she otherwise would be able to.
Well, we should talk a little bit more about large audiences because there's a lot of stuff going on here. And Finn, Donald Trump's going to be in Michigan and Pennsylvania this weekend. Talk to us about his focus.
Yeah, Lana, that's right. He's going to be in those two key battleground states, part of that blue wall that we've been hearing about so much this cycle. Donald Trump is going to be focusing on his closing argument, Lana. And what the campaign tells us is that's going to be focused on his primary issue, his top issue of this cycle, and that's immigration and border security. He's also in those two states. And if you recall, Lana, he did win those states in 2016. He upset Hillary Clinton in that cycle. But then of course, Joe Biden won them back in 20. The campaign feels strongly right now that they feel confident in recent weeks, seeing some internal polling numbers, but also the momentum they feel that is building in those respective states. They feel strongly that they can close and win those states back. But as you noted, Lana, it is a dead heat right now in those battleground states. So in this last stretch, Donald Trump is really trying to amplify his message. They're trying to really target those blue-collar voters. And he's also going to be focused on the auto industry, Lana, and of course, fracking and energy in those respective states as well.
And Finn, as we're talking about the final stretch, let's discuss Vice President Harris's closing arguments. It seems to be focusing on Trump and how he is a, quote, fascist, but she's getting some backlash for this. Talk to us about why that is and whether you think it's going to help her or hurt her at this stage.
Yeah, so right now you are seeing some of that backlash, but it's mainly emanating from Donald Trump and his supporters. Of course, this all started because Donald Trump's former White House chief of staff, John Kelly, described in an interview that he believed that the former president is a fascist, that he characterized him as such. But the backlash that we're seeing is from Trump supporters. The Trump campaign also put out a campaign video today from a Auschwitz survivor, a 94-year-old man who's also a supporter of Donald Trump, who was critical of Vice President Harris's characterization of calling Donald Trump a fascist, and said he knows more about Hitler than she ever will, and said that there was nothing to compare, that he was not a fascist. However, it is resonating amongst the Democratic base. The Harris campaign tells us, and they feel that they will not only will drive those base supporters, but could also potentially appeal to moderate Republicans and those Republicans and independents on the bubble, some of which are in the suburban areas, a critical part of the electorate.
And of course, Hitler is part of this conversation because retired General Kelly, the former chief of staff to President Trump, had said that Trump himself talked about Hitler and said that he actually had some things going for him in a positive sense. But Zach, as we are talking about trying to have big audiences, and we're now shifting our attention to the former president, he's holding a campaign rally at New York's Madison Square Garden on Sunday. This is something that he's long wanted to do. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, on its surface, this is a show of force event. It is as iconic and large a venue as someone could have for a political event. And it's in New York City, the hometown of Donald Trump, a place that he has long cared deeply about. But I think the more interesting factor here is that this event is also going to function somewhat as a fundraiser. There are various VIP packages that can be purchased. The most souped up one is about $900,000 and offers various backstage access and things like that. But this is a fundraiser of sorts while also being a major rally. It's a place where former President Trump is going to get to juice his bank as he struggles to keep up with the fundraising operation of VP Harris and the DNC. So it'll both be an opportunity to show an enormous crowd there for him in a Democratic stronghold, but also an opportunity to make some money as he enters this final stretch.
All right, Zach Hudak, Gómez, thank you both.